And on this morning, Palm Sunday, and particularly on this Unity Sunday, I particularly wanted to speak on this encounter, on this occasion, because I think it's really, really important, especially at this juncture of our church. And yeah, I think what God wants to tell us this morning. And so we have a very, very typical situation here, and it's almost uncanny how typical this situation is. Jesus is on his way to Jerusalem, and he comes to the home of two sisters. We also know that they had a brother named Lazarus, but he doesn't feature in this story. Okay, only the sisters are here this time. The sisters are named Martha and Mary. Okay, and I remember preaching on Martha and Mary before, and I got Martha and Mary confused, and my kids still laugh at me for that. Mary, Martha, Mary, Martha, Mary. So I'll try to keep that in order, but you know, hopefully by the context, even if I'm wrong, you'll be able to tell which one I mean. So the amazing thing, beautiful thing, so kind of real life thing about these sisters is that they grew up in the same family, siblings, same upbringing, same home, everything, and yet they are complete polar opposites as personalities. You might have some siblings like that in your own family. I'm sure you've seen many, many siblings sets like this, same family, same everything. You say, what in the world? These people are completely different. And so on the one hand, we've got Martha. Okay? Martha is your typical type A personality, we can say that. She's hardworking, she's task-oriented, she's a go-getter, she seems to be ambitious, she seems to be very talented. Right? She knows what needs to get done, and she does it. And in fact, it looks like she's an amazing person, incredibly successful. I don't know if you noticed, if you look at verse 38 again, it says, as Jesus and his disciples were on their way, he came to a village where a woman named Martha opened whose home? Her home. That's interesting. She opened her home to him. Whose home was this? This is big sister Martha's home. She is fantastically successful. Right? It's not a small thing to own your own home. In this day and age, can you imagine 2,000 years ago, especially with no husband that we know of in sight, she has her own home. Amazing woman, right? Very successful, wealthy, in fact, by her hard work, which we get a glimpse of in this passage. We see that she has made something with her life. Now, her little sister Mary, on the other hand, she seems to be, again, a nice girl, but kind of maybe a bit of the quiet one, sort of maybe the contemplative one. Some might even call her the lazy one. Right? And it's amazing, Jesus and his disciples show up at Martha's home where Mary also lives, and the two sisters immediately go into their kind of native sort of position in life, in personality. Right? And by the way, it says that Jesus and his disciples, Jesus travels with 12 other men, full-grown men. It's not a small thing, right? And there's no cell phones at this time. Right? There's no WhatsApp. There's no saying, hey, Martha, by the way, we're going to be there in half an hour or tomorrow. You just show up. Can you imagine a personality like Martha? 13 full-grown men show up at your house one evening, and, she just goes into action. Can you just imagine Martha in action? It's a thing of wonder, right? She starts moving, and she starts coordinating, and servants, and go to the shop, go to the market, and cut the goat, and this and that, and what all needs to happen at this moment. 13 men have showed up unannounced at my house, including one of them happens to be the Son of God. Imagine the quantity of food that you have to prepare. And imagine the Son of God visiting your house. I remember listening to one preacher. He said, you don't want to be the one who made the Son of God sick with your food. You imagine the preparation, the cleaning, the washing, everything that goes into feeding Jesus along with his entourage of at least 12 disciples. Okay? She's in full action. She's moving, she's delegating, she's running everywhere. And where's Martha? Well, again, let's see verse 40. Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. Let's start in verse 39. She had a sister called Mary who sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he said, but Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. So Martha, fully at work, like a tornado moving through the house, yelling, screaming, perhaps. Mary, what is Mary doing? She's sitting in the sitting room, in the drawing room with the guests, chatting, drinking chai, eating pakoras that Martha is making in the kitchen. And Martha, you can just imagine, big sister Martha, the steam is rising, and she can take it for a few minutes, and a few minutes, and a few minutes, and it's been like half an hour, it's been an hour. Mary has not lifted a finger. She has not even asked if she can help. She's just sitting at the Lord's feet. And Martha explodes, right? Explodes. Look at, again, verse 40. Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. She came to him and asked, "Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do the work by myself? Tell her to help me." She doesn't listen to me. I've known this for years. Right? This lazy little sister of mine. You tell her. Maybe she'll listen to you. How would Jesus answer this question? Martha working so hard. She just wants to be a good hostess. Jesus has come to her house. Right? She wants everything perfect as much as she can. It's a lot of work. Probably even tomorrow she has to go back to the office. She's got bills to pay, responsibilities to take care of. She's doing her best. I would imagine Jesus would say, "Mary, go. We'll talk later. Right? I'll come again." Right? Look at how Jesus answers. Amazing words. Just, even as I read them, just take them into your heart. Verse 41. "Martha, Martha," the Lord answered, "you are worried and upset about many things, but few things are needed, or indeed only one. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her." Martha, Martha. So, what do we find out about Martha in this particular situation? Well, Jesus says, he uses two words here. She is worried. And not only is she worried, but she's upset. In some of the English translations, these words are translated anxious and troubled. Worried, upset, anxious, troubled. Right? And we can add on a few more words, I believe, right, from the evidence that we have here in this passage. She's overwhelmed. You would be too if you were in this situation. So much work in such a short time. I want to do my best. I want everything to be nice and beautiful and perfect and memorable for Jesus. How is this all going to come together by dinner time? The worry, the upset, the overwhelm leads to complaining. Right? We could call this tattletaling. And this is not the first time, I'm sure, that Martha's been tattletaling on her little sister Mary. Right? Now she's tattletaling to Jesus, complaining to Jesus, "Jesus, don't you see this girl? And by the way, did you notice she doesn't just complain to Jesus, she's also complaining a little bit about Jesus. Right? Did you see that in middle of verse 40? She came to him and asked, Lord, don't you care? Jesus is a part of the problem, isn't he? Right? Mary, anyway, she's a useless, lazy girl. Jesus, don't you see? I'm going crazy here. Don't you care? Worried, upset, overwhelmed, complaining, leading to a touch of self-pity, isn't there? A little bit of self-pity there. Don't you care about me? Don't you see me? Does anybody notice how hard I'm working? Doesn't anybody care about the fact that I need help? A little self-pity creeping in to Martha's heart, and of course, anger. She didn't start out angry. She wanted it to be a nice evening with Jesus and his disciples. Right? But it's so hard. That's only so much you can take. The anger, just bubbles over. I think another word you can probably add on fairly here is she's bitter. Right? Again, this is not the first time she's been in this situation, especially with Mary. Bitterness that's been building over a very, very long time. So, worried, upset, anxious, troubled, overwhelmed, complaining, self-pity, angry, bitter. Before we go on, I just want to ask, can anybody relate to any of these words? Don't raise your hand, don't even nod. Right? This is me. This is all of them. This is most of us, right? This is every day. This is our lives. Now, the very interesting thing, this is the main point now of this passage and of this message this morning. The main point, Luke, who's writing this, he happens to be a doctor. And you know what doctors do? They see symptoms and they make a diagnosis. Right? And Luke, even before Jesus speaks, he's already made his diagnosis because it's very obvious. Right? Someone who has these characteristics in their heart right now, there's only one reason why. Right? And you see it here again in verse 40. But Martha was distracted. Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made, all the work that needed to be done. She's distracted. The core issue that Martha has, she's distracted. Everything else flows from the fact that she's distracted. Distracted from what? She's distracted from the main thing. The word distracted, as I was just meditating on it again for the last few days, I realized that word doesn't mean anything, does it, on its own? Right? You're always distracted from something. What is she distracted from? Well, it's very simple. She's distracted from Jesus. Isn't that amazing? Working so hard for Jesus, and at the same time, distracted from Jesus. And in fact, it's interesting, the literal original Greek here in verse 42, when Jesus says, but few things are needed, or indeed only one, Mary has chosen what is better. The original says, Mary has chosen the better portion. Isn't that an interesting word? Almost definitely a play on words. She has chosen the better portion. Martha has been working so hard, and who's going to get the best portion? The leg piece of the chicken? The corner piece of the cake? Where there's icing on both sides? Who's going to get the best portion? Of course, Jesus. She's so hard making the best portion for Jesus, she doesn't realize the best meal is not being prepared for Jesus, it's coming from Jesus. Right? Mary, she's sitting and feasting. She's sitting and feasting. While Martha's so hard working to prepare a meal for Jesus, Mary's enjoying a meal from Jesus. And what does Jesus want? He doesn't want chicken. He doesn't want all that hard work and the perfect tablecloth and the fancy drink and the perfect kind of ambiance and everything else. What does he want? He wants Martha. He wants her heart. He wants to be with her. That's why he came. He didn't come for a fancy meal, right? He came to be with her. Not what he can get from her, but what he can give to her. And I just wonder this morning, if there's so many of us, including myself, as I was, again, meditating on this passage these last few days, I was so convicted again. So distracted. Distracted by what? Not by bad things, good things. Right? I'm a pastor working for Jesus. That's my job. Working for Jesus. And even if you're not a pastor, right? We're not doing bad things, I hope. We're doing good things only. We're working hard in our jobs to provide for our families, and we're trying to pay bills. And we're trying to get our kids to their various, classes and appointments and this and that, and there's so much going on. And who am I doing it for? I'm not doing it for myself. I'm doing it for them. I'm doing it for God. And yet, is it possible that we can be working so hard, trying to do everything right? We've got talents, and we're trying to put them to good use. We're doing them for God. We're doing them for others. And yet, could it be that we're distracted from the main thing? What is the main thing? Jesus says only one thing is needed. One thing is needed, not 1,000 things. You're busy. You're overwhelmed. You're worried, upset, troubled, anxious about so many things. But only one thing was needed. To sit with me, to be with me. To not lose sight of me, to abide in me, to remain in me. To hear from me. To sit at my feet. What's the solution? Simply, time with Jesus. Time with Jesus. Do we have a few minutes to spend with Jesus? Or are we going to be like Martha? And the fact is that most of us, if not all of us, are like Martha. And we have the same symptoms from the same problem. Distraction from Jesus. Therefore, troubled, anxious, overwhelmed, complaining, self-pitying, angry, bitter, etc., etc. And the list can go on and on and on. Right? One thing is needed. How did we miss that? Could it be that we've been working so hard, running around doing everything and missed the point? Missed the point. Just imagine if you are throwing this party. It could be a birthday party for your friend, or it could be for your child, or a Christmas party, and you want this to be, the big bash of the year. And you put in so much money and effort and planning, the food, the venue, the decorations, the lighting, the music. It has to be all perfect. And first we're going to do this, maybe this game or this activity, and I'm going to serve this food and this drink, and the people will come in like this, and they'll go around like that, and all those kinds of things. Imagine if you planned everything meticulously, perfectly, down to the very last detail, except for one thing, which is that you forgot to send out the invitations. Can you imagine? The big day comes, and nobody shows up. Actually, I was thinking of that same illustration again this morning, and I thought of even one step even worse. Imagine if you did send the invitations, but you realized that you didn't have any friends. Because you've been working so hard doing everything that you've never even spent time with anybody. And when you give a party invitation, you don't even have any relationships for people to show up. How sad. Could it be we're working so hard, running around, doing everything so well, doing our best, and we miss the point of it all? We miss the point of it all. And the reason I wanted to talk about this particular encounter on this Sunday, it's not Palm Sunday message this morning, unfortunately, but it is Unity Sunday, and it is our last sort of official Sunday together as this big family before people move and new church starts and all those kinds of things. And there's going to be a lot of work. And anyways, we're already doing a lot of work. And many new people are going to have to volunteer. Many new people are going to have to get involved in Sunday school and worship team and ushering and so many things. Even this church is almost going to be like a new church, right, in many ways. And certainly that church is going to be like a new church, is going to be a new church. And God forbid that we start becoming busy in so many things and miss the point. Right? That's why we say Christianity is not a religion, it's a relationship. It's a relationship means it's a relationship, an actual relationship, not just in theory, not just in theology, not just as a statement of faith, but an actual relationship with another being. And the whole point is to be with Him. The whole point of life is to be with Him. The whole point of heaven that we're going to be doing for eternity is to be with Him. Could it be that we're distracted by many things when only one thing at the end of the day was really needed? To be with Jesus. Personally and corporately together as His people, to simply be with Jesus. And so, my friends, this morning, on this day, beginning of Holy Week, last Sunday together is like this. Is there a change that you need to make? In all of your good intentions and all of your hard work, and even your work for Jesus Himself, that you have missed the main thing, which is actually being with Jesus, spending time with Jesus, even if that just means 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Are we really all so busy that we can't spend 10 minutes with Jesus? Impossible. This is not a busyness issue. Absolutely not. I don't accept that. We have time for everything, and we make time for everything. Right? This is a heart issue. Right? Martha's issue is a heart issue. One last thing before I close. What about Martha? Oops, sorry. What about her? Don't we need Marthas? After all, where would they be sitting if it wasn't for Martha? Right? Somebody's got to work hard. Right? If everybody's just sitting, somebody's got to eat dinner. Even Jesus got hungry. Right? What about Martha? Absolutely, we need Martha. And this is the kind of insight that came to me a few years ago as I was meditating on this. It's not, Martha's a wonderful person. We need tons and tons of Marthas. Thank God that He hasn't made us all Marys. Right? We need Marthas. But here's the answer, I would say. We need to cultivate Mary's heart before we start working with Martha's hands. We need to cultivate Mary's heart before we start working with Martha's hands. And even Mary's not exempt from Martha's hands. Okay, we need to work. God has given us all talents and all gifts. Right? We need to be there, serving God, doing our best, working hard. But first thing, one thing ultimately is needed, right? And that is to be with Jesus. Right? And out of the overflow of that, everything else will come. And not only will it come, but it will come without being worried. It will. It really will. You're worried, you're anxious, you're troubled, you're overwhelmed, you're complaining, you're angry, you're bitter, and self-pitying and everything else, what is the problem? I'm telling you the problem. Jesus is telling us the problem. The problem is that you're distracted from spending time with Jesus. If you would just spend a few minutes with Jesus before you get up and start working, like a tornado, moving through the house, moving through the office, and everything else, if you just spend a few minutes with Jesus, the whole situation would change. Have you even tried? And another thing, just to add on, a few minutes with Jesus, especially praying to Jesus, is worth more than hours and days and years of working. Did you know that, somebody, I remember reading this chapter, somebody wrote a book on prayer, I think, and this I just remember the chapter. It was called The Greatest Time Saver. Prayer. Prayer, the greatest time saver. Did you know that God can do in a few seconds what would take us years? He can multiply miraculously. In fact, we were talking about prayer in our home group on Friday, and I was telling them that, since the prayer seminar that we had, I think in August, I've been praying. It was really life-transforming for me. That's why I'm excited about the camp in October. It was literally life-changing for me. Since that seminar, like literally the day after that seminar, I've been praying more, and not just more time, but more seriously, more intentionally, writing things, the prayer journals that we had, we're still doing that in our family. And the answers to prayer that I've seen in the last 8 months or whatever, however long it's been, I think it's probably the same as I've seen the whole of my life before that, maybe. And now it's actually documented in the prayer journal and everything. I can tell you exactly when I started praying for it, when God answered, and I'm just in awe. Okay? We spend the time cultivating our heart with Jesus, not just doing things for Jesus, right? But actually receiving from Jesus. He doesn't want things from us. He wants us. He's calling us to be with him. We be with him. It changes everything. It changes our work. It changes our hearts. It makes things happen, things that never could happen. This is the power. Dear friends, one thing's needed. One thing's needed. Right? Let us not, at any cost, be distracted. No. Let us not be distracted from that one thing that is needed, to be with Jesus. Let's just bow our heads and close our eyes. Worried, anxious, troubled, upset, overwhelmed, complaining, self-pitying, angry, bitter, exhausted, maybe hopeless, certainly without peace. All symptoms of one core issue: being distracted with many things when only one thing is needed. Jesus tells Martha that Mary has chosen what is better, the better portion, the feast. Sitting at Jesus' feet, it will not be taken away from her. It's only going to be multiplied. It's only going to bear beautiful fruit in Mary's life. She didn't neglect the one thing, the main thing, the whole point of it all. Could it be that we are also distracted and therefore we experience all the other symptoms that Martha also had? What do we need to do? The answer is very clear. We need to spend time with Jesus. Before we get up to work with Martha's hands, we need to cultivate Mary's heart, sitting at Jesus' feet, listening from him, spending time with him. How are you going to do that? Are you doing that? Have you ever done that? What do I need to change to make this a consistent part of my day, especially my morning, to be with Jesus, even 5 minutes, 10 minutes? That changes the rest of the hours of the day. Let's just take a moment and commit, make decisions, make plans, whatever we need to do. Let's take a moment. Dear Lord, in the midst of all the things that we need to do, may we not neglect the one thing that is needed: to be with you, to learn from you, to sit at your feet, to read your word, to hear your voice speaking to us, to spend time with you in prayer. Lord, may this not be true, that we might be distracted, Lord. Help us to choose the better portion day after day after day, and use us, Lord, for your glory. And we pray this all in Jesus' name. Amen.